Could Joe Biden lose the popular vote to Donald Trump in 2024? Hello, this is Robert Romano, Vice President of Public Policy with Americans for Limited Government. Hit that subscribe button. Today, we're going to be talking about the horse race with Donald Trump and potentially Joe Biden facing off against one another should Trump secure his party's nomination in the Republican Party, and should Biden stay on to be the Democratic nominee running for re-election in November 2024. Assuming that's the case, Trump's been leading, obviously, the polls in the Republican primary against Nikki Haley and against Ron DeSantis. And Joe Biden, he's an incumbent president. And although there are some challengers, Dean Phillips and Marianne Williamson in the Democratic primary, no one's really expecting them to defeat Joe Biden, although they could be somewhat competitive, which could indicate that Joe Biden is actually a weak incumbent. And so the testing grounds will be in places like New Hampshire, where Joe Biden's not even going to be on the ballot. So could he actually do kind of poorly there, kind of like Lyndon Baines Johnson did very poorly in New Hampshire in 1968. And his challenger actually, Johnson still won, but his challenger did better than expected. Same thing happened to Jimmy Carter in 1980 when Ted Kennedy was running against him, and Ted Kennedy did better than expected. In 1992, Republican George H.W. Bush was running for re-election, and Pat Buchanan did better than expected in New Hampshire, and so forth. So you could see actually some challenge to the incumbent president coming out of places like New Hampshire or in the primary in general that could indicate that there are people who would normally vote in the Democratic primary, who would normally support the Democratic president, who are saying they're not going to do that. And that could indicate why Joe Biden is in trouble and why that's starting to turn up in the national polls. And so what I wanted to do today was look at my piece from today. Let's see, we'll go over here, see if you can see it. There you go, 2024 will test the longevity of the civil society. And we're going to look at a bunch of polls in here. I think they're pretty interesting. I'll just give you the lead here. This is the civil society. This is Donald Trump's inauguration. There's Barack Obama. There's Joe Biden. There's a peaceful transfer of power going on there. And boy, have we got a long way from there. We are. Little did we know that at the time they were spying on the Trump, transition. They had spied on the Trump campaign. They'd carried this top secret investigation over into the Trump administration, even as he was being sworn into office. So this was actually kind of a facade, but it's also a picture of maybe, I don't know, the last time we'll see something like this, this kind of graceful exchange of power, or seemingly graceful, as they were carrying on a top secret investigation into their political opponent, the opposition party, in an election year under false charges that he was a Russian agent, a foreign agent. Boy, what a canard that was, but what a can of worms that this has opened up and put us into. Now, I want to talk about the popular vote. Republicans have not won the popular vote since 2004 with George W. Bush. They lost it in 2008. 2012, obviously, Barack Obama was elected and reelected, but they also lost it in 2016 when Trump was elected, and then again in 2020 when Joe Biden was elected for the first time. But unlike those races, Trump's actually doing pretty good in these national polls, which are popular vote polls. So unlike in 2020, when then candidate Joe Biden was leading almost all of the polls, out of 293 polls taken during that cycle, compiled by RealClearPolitics.com, Biden led 285 of them, or 97% of them. This is, again, not the state by state. This is the popular vote polls. And you can see here's the 285 polls, and Biden's leading almost every single one of those, 97% of them. And he does win the popular vote. Joe Biden does. He also wins the Electoral College with kind of narrowly, by a scant 43,000 votes in 3 states, 10,000 in Georgia, 10,000 in Arizona, and 23,000 in Wisconsin. Now, regardless of how he got there, mail-in balloting, et cetera, those were the numbers. But here's something interesting to note in the popular vote polls. So of all the polls, you take the average. That's what Real Clear Politics does. It averaged 51.2%. And then the final results for Biden were 51.4% of the popular vote. Trump, on the other hand, he was averaging 44%, but then he shows up with nearly 47% of the popular vote total. So he goes up by 2.9 points. in this popular vote polling average versus what actually happened on election day. So there was an understated Donald Trump support in the polls in 2020. Same thing actually happened in 2016. Again, and Hillary Clinton, she was leading nearly all of the polls. She did actually more poorly than Joe Biden in the polls that year. Trump wins, is ahead in a few more of these. But suffice to say, Hillary Clinton was leading almost all of them, a substantial majority of them. So, and on the average, it predicted she was going to win the popular vote, which she did, 48.2% to 46.1%. But note again that Trump actually is underpolled at 43.6%. So what does this tell you is that Donald Trump is actually underpolling both in 2016 and again in 2020. There's a hidden Trump vote in these any polls that tend to be taken. So then when you look at 2024, you want to look at Trump versus Biden. I have it here somewhere. Oh no, we need to go back to our where's the 2021? Oh boy, we're just gonna have to go to we'll just go to the front page here and we'll pull up the most recent Trump Biden polls. Apologies, I should have had that one pulled up there, but that's fine. It's really easy to find. Here's the general election matchup. Shows Trump 2 points up in the popular vote. It's probably going to glitch a little here while that's pulling up here. But you can see here, Trump's actually leading the average by 2.2 points. He's at 46.5%, and Biden's at 44.3%. So if Trump was averaging behind in the popular vote total in 2020 by 2.9 points, and then again in 2016 by about 2.5 points. So if Trump's down by if you should add 2.5 percentage points to his total for 2024 as well, because he's going to underpoll again. If you support Trump, you're an enemy of the state or something like that. That could be very significant. Maybe Trump's closer to say 48 or 49% or even 50%. Could he win the popular vote in 2024? He's doing really well in the polls compared to 2016 and compared to 2020. So I actually tallied that one out as well. So this time around, Donald Trump has an observable advantage in the popular vote national polls that are being taken right now, leading President Biden in 103 out of 214 polls taken. That's 48% of them. Biden's only led 81 of these polls, or just 38%, and 30 are tied, or 14% of them are tied right now. And you can scroll down. Here's all the polls. You see Trump's leading, almost about half of them, and then a bunch of them are tied. And this seems to be growing. That in more recent polls, Trump's been doing better and better and the primaries haven't even started yet. And then but think about it. If Trump's ahead by 2.2 points, that could mean he's more, in reality, more like he's up by like 5 points if he's still underpolling. Again, if you support Trump, you're considered an enemy in the state. So if a pollster calls you up and says, "Do you support President Trump?" You might say no, or I'm unsure, or I don't know. In that context, that there could be still a hidden Trump vote now more than ever. But suffice to say, even with that, he's still leading these polls. Which, because the polls were real, you don't take these for granted. A lot of folks want to, knock Joe Biden off the ballot so that Gavin Newsom or Michelle Obama or somebody else can run, even Kamala Harris. But they don't do that because the only people who do worse in the polls against Donald Trump than Joe Biden is everyone else who might run against Donald Trump in 2024. But I just note here that given the Democrats' historical advantage in the popular vote, Republicans have not won the popular vote since 2004, but still managed to eke out electoral college victories in both 2000 and in 2016 without it. That any potential tie in the popular vote would still bode well for Trump and Republicans in 2024. So if you factor in the ones that are tied and these national polls that had them actually tied, that really you probably figure Trump's going to still win the electoral college if the popular vote is actually tied. So really about 62% and rising of these polls show that Trump has a significant advantage with less than a year to go until the election. And I would note this is true even in the 4-way, the 5-way, and the 7-way race polls. So here is this is 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is Trump, Biden, Kennedy, West. And Trump's leading those on average by 2.8 percentage points of the ones that have been taken. Let's see here. We've also got, this is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-way race. So if you have Trump versus Biden versus Kennedy versus Cornel West versus Jill Stein running again potentially, Trump's leading by 5 points, and he's led every single one of these polls this in the 5-way race. And then the same can be said, there's the 5-way race again. Here's a 7-way race that sometimes they say, let's throw Joe Manchin into this. Let's throw Mapstead into this. So even in the 7-way race, Trump tends to lead those as well. So and this is all a departure again from 2016 and 2020, when Democrats have been traditionally leading the popular vote national polls. So I find that to be highly significant going forward. This could have a major impact upon the race and how people perceive the race. And I think it already has, since the polls are real. Again, some folks want to knock Joe Biden out of the race. They don't think he can win based upon these polls. But then they do, kind of polls that they don't publish that show that no, Trump would beat Newsom too. Trump will beat some of these other candidates as well, Kamala Harris and so forth, who's the vice president. So since the polls are real and show Biden is quite vulnerable, regardless of which race is considered, rather early in the process, the primaries haven't begun yet. This is leading to widespread panic in the Washington, D.C. establishment and attempts to remove Trump from the ballot, first from Colorado by the Supreme Court there, and now Maine, as the Republican Party in both of these states is now appealing, along with President Trump, to the Supreme Court so that Republicans in the primary and then general election voters will be the ones who get to determine who the next president is. The panic and push to remove Trump, in turn, is threatening to continue what I argue is a constitutional crisis that began in 2016 with the attempt to first subvert his candidacy and then his administration on false charges that he was a foreign agent. Even after Trump won, official Washington, D.C. did not accept the outcome and sought to overturn, if not the election's outcome, although that was attempted via the Electoral College to create some faithless electors. It didn't work. Then to delegitimize the outcome of the election and to effectively run out the clock. And again, I had noted that there was this counterintelligence investigation that began during the Obama administration and when Joe Biden was vice president into Trump while he was running for president. They were literally using the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act to look into and to spy on Carter Page. So you recall, here is the Carter Page FISA warrant from October of 2016. And this investigation was carried over into the Trump administration under suspicions that he was a foreign agent. It turns out that it had been made up by the Clinton campaign, the Hillary Clinton campaign in 2016 to be used against her opponent because she had an FBI investigation of her own. The John Durham special counsel had looked into this, made a big report. We've covered that before in the past. Turns out that was the rationale. That was the motive for forwarding these, Christopher Steele dossier, Fusion GPS, all of that stuff to the FBI so that they would launch an investigation into Trump to kind of equal out what Clinton was going through with her own FBI investigation because she was storing classified information on her private server at home. So they wanted to have, let's have FBI investigations for everyone. Won't that be wonderful? So then you get the Carter Page FISA warrant that was used against Donald Trump. And it really was designed to sabotage, because by the time he won the election, it's like, we should back off, forget about this, throw this in the garbage. Hopefully no one ever finds out about it. Instead, they carried forward with it, and it's begun a constitutional crisis. Now, by 2020, with the help of COVID and the ensuing economic lockdowns, plus mail-in balloting, Democrats managed to boost turnout in the election to narrowly defeat Trump. Again, we noted by 43,000 votes in Georgia, Arizona, Wisconsin. So it's 10,000 plus 10,000 plus 23,000, which if they had gone the other way, the Electoral College would have been tied 269 to 269. And barring faithless electors at the Electoral College, the election would have actually gone to the House of Representatives. So given the closeness, Trump returned the favor visited upon him in 2016 and challenged the outcome of the election and its legitimacy as well. This unfortunately led to the riot at the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. Numerous prosecutions of the rioters, whether they were peaceful or not, and now prosecutions of Trump himself in a bid to imprison him and add legitimacy to the attempt to keep him off ballot. Congress also, the House, impeached him, and then the Senate acquitted him. He was charged with insurrection by the House, and the Senate said not guilty. So Trump's already been tried for insurrection, and he was found not guilty. But here is Maine. Here is the Secretary of State, the Colorado Supreme Court, without any trial, without any conviction of insurrection. They're saying you violated the 14th Amendment, Section 3. You committed insurrection. You're no better than the Confederates in the Civil War. Therefore, we can keep you off the ballot arbitrarily at a whim. So now the Supreme Court's probably going to have to hear this case. We strongly urge the Supreme Court to hear that case and to allow the American people and not these judicial fiats and executive orders to determine who the candidates are going to be in the election, because it's a catastrophe. This is a catastrophe in the making, because this is all very insane, every bit of it, because it's dangerous. The U.S. Civil War began in 1860 because the defeated political party, the Democrats, could not accept the outcome of the election of Abraham Lincoln. And that's when the secession crisis began. Everyone stood for election in 1860. The Republicans win for the very first time. Abraham Lincoln wins. And then states start seceding and saying, we're not going to be in the United States anymore. That's exactly what is being risked right now, I fear. So that began a process. And in 2016, I argued this process has begun again, as now both parties have joined in what appears to be mortal combat over who gets to sit in the White House, even though whether it is Trump or Biden, both would be constitutionally term limited. And second terms are usually kind of difficult to move legislation and get much accomplished anyways. As things proceed, the election does not even appear to be turning on issues so far. But when those are considered, I would again note that in issues like the war in Ukraine, Trump's opponents, I think they'd rather, there be a general war between the U.S. and Russia than to admit that Trump was right about the powder keg there. The 2016 counterintelligence investigation, this Carter Page FISA warrant, when you read through it, what you'll discover is that part of it, of the justification for launching the investigation into Trump, was his positions on the situation in Ukraine. He was running against a U.S. intervention there. There were also allegations that there were changes made to the Republican platform to do with weapons to Ukraine. So there was a lot of, and the idea that, Russia was trying to help Trump. All of this is predicated on Trump's kind of anti-war posture that he took in the 2016 election versus Hillary Clinton. He would make warnings about World War III. He's doing it again in the context of his, running against Joe Biden again. He's saying, things are heating up. I warned you this would happen. You really needed to, have a good deterrent against Russia, knowing Russia that didn't invade Ukraine during the Trump administration. And that's true. So Trump wants to say that he's the candidate that can prevent the war going forward, just like he did in 2016. That's why this investigation was launched against him in the first place. So you're not allowed to oppose the war, or this establishment is coming after you, apparently. And now Trump's opponents would apparently rather see the republic fall in civil war, just like almost every other republic in history, I would note, that fell in civil war, than see him in office again. So you can't admit Trump was right about the powder keg in Ukraine, and as a result, and you won't even let him go on the ballot. And this, is this going to cause another secession crisis? Are we going to have another civil war? Just rather than let these candidates stand for election and let the American people determine who the next term limited president's going to be, whoever it is, if it's Trump or if it's Biden, they're only going to serve 4 years anyways. And both of them are getting kind of old anyway. So we're not going to have some like lifelong dictator or something like that coming out of this. Maybe we could just, have an election and then let the process work its way forward. And we're not going to try to, challenge the results here. But it seems like now if Trump wins, then the other side's not going to accept the outcome. If Trump loses, maybe Trump won't accept the outcome because that's just what's happened in 2016 and 2020. You've had two consecutive elections where the defeated party was challenging the results and saying that that it was fake or something. And so that's dangerous because in 1860, it led to the Civil War. So you should kind of be careful what you wish for. I think in this context, prosecuting Trump and trying to keep him off the ballot, I think that the people doing this, I think they're hoping that supporters, it doesn't matter which side is doing it, by the way, does something stupid and thus creates a predicate for the federal government to seize even more police powers for itself atop the mass surveillance and censorship regimes that have already been exposed. That is, everything appears to be on the table except backing off, maybe, or admitting a mistake. Historians might look back and ascribe the inevitable outcome as a product of hubris. And surely, I don't know, extreme pride, you could note that, was on display throughout this process. But it would also ignore the deliberate catalyzation of what has occurred against constitutional norms that are being destroyed as the nation now appears to be on the brink of catastrophe. I mean, like what? You had the Obama administration spying on the Trump campaign in an election year, the opposition party, and then they carried it over into the Trump administration under bogus charges from his opponent that he was some sort of foreign agent. And now, and then they try to impeach him. They try to remove him. Trump returns to favor in 2020. He challenges the election. They say, we'll prosecute you for that. We'll throw you in jail for that. That's insurrection. They should have arrested, if that's what they thought about it, they should have arrested themselves for insurrection for launching the stupid counterintelligence investigation in the first place. So that, yeah, we're on the brink of catastrophe. I think this is a constitutional crisis. In short, Washington, D.C. perceives an existential threat to their power beginning in 2016, real or imagined, and thus have created one. But now it's to all of our liberties. 2024 will test the civil society's longevity, but I fear we lack knowledge of its institutions to truly preserve them. We understand the consent of the governed, but that's not enough to want to preserve it. This is Robert Romano, Vice President of Public Policy with Americans for Limited Government, dailytorch.com. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and we could check out the chat here for a second, see if you are all tuning in here. Let's see here. Let's see. John Bayron says, this is right-wing propaganda. That's okay. Go watch something else, buddy. Let's see. Mary Redwine says, Biden's already lost twice. Let's see. Thomas Alvin says that the other guy was a brainwashed moron. Left coast wing, Mary Ritchie asks. Let's see here. Dale Hedrick says, the only propaganda comes from the left. Truth comes from the right. I don't know. I'm going to go with Ronald Reagan on this one, who said there in his time for choosing speech, there is no left or right. There is only up or down. So there's only tyranny and there's liberty. There's the government and there's the rest of us. So, actually the right and left lexicon was never a part of American political discourse until the 1920s when it got imported in a very extreme variety from Europe. At that point, the right was the fascists and the left were the communists. And that was the brilliant political framework we had imported at the time. Obviously, predated that, goes back to the French Revolution. And those who supported the king would sit in the legislature, I guess, would sit on the right. And those who, wanted to get rid of the king, they sat on the left. That's what it goes back to. In any event, so Dale Hedrick says that truth comes from the right. You've had over 3 years to look at the truth, yet you still would rather parrot some BS lies from the Biden regime. I'm not supporting Biden. What are you talking about? All right, let's see here. Martinez Bella Spencer says right wing. It's like, okay, I don't know. There's no left or right. Reagan was right. There's just tyranny and there's liberty. Let's just go there. Gabriel David says, hi, how are you? I hope you are a family. Spend your, okay, whatever. So there's some spam in the chat. That's okay. David Smith says, after installing Biden, one thing is obvious. America sucks. Democrat voters made it possible. Thomas Alvin says, I'm a liberal progressive Republican because there's nothing liberal or progressive about communism or Islamic caliphate. And that's the bottom of the chat there. Again, I think that we need to focus on preserving the civil society. It does look like Trump is actually has a considerable observable advantage in the popular vote national polls that are being taken right now. And that could bode well for him in the 2024 elections, should he be, allowed to appear on the ballot. That's in question right now. But this is Robert Romano, Vice President of Public Policy with Americans for Limited Government, dailytorch.com. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and have a good day.